Good day, my name is Sky, and thanks for spending some study time with me. I'm here to help you make money in online poker by teaching you key strategies and action taking. So you're going to love today's episode. I'm going to teach you two different things here. The first is I'm going to help you plug your leaks. Now, poker leaks are those things that we continually do, whether we know that we're doing them or not, but we make these plays over and over again, and it's costing us money. So we're going to plug poker leaks today. And then we're going to turn around and exploit other players with that same leak. So the time that you spend studying your leak, working on fixing it, plugging that leak, you're going to take what you learn from that and exploit others. So you're going to really like this episode. It's kind of like a 1-2 combo of poker improvement. To help you take notes and learn from the episode, go to the show notes page, smartpokerstudy.com/pod426. Well, without further ado, let's do this. Gambate!
Here's to the Army and Navy and the battles they have won. Here's to America's colors, the colors that never run.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
I know that there are plenty of areas in your game that you're just not happy with. Maybe they're poker leaks costing you money, or they're spots where you just don't know what to do. Maybe your skills are simply lacking. It could be something pre-flop or post-flop related. Maybe playing in position versus playing out of position. Maybe playing from the blinds or selecting hands to play pre-flop. Maybe you just don't even know how to respond to donk bets, right? Or check raises, or even the C bets your opponents always throw at you. Maybe you keep calling and losing on the river, or maybe you've had Poker Tracker 4 for a year now and you haven't even done one hand history review just yet. Now, I have my own list of 4 weaknesses that I'm going to turn into strengths, and I will list those for you in just a little bit. But first, how did I come up with this list? Well, there's 3 parts to this. Part 1 is being present at the table and realizing uncomfortable feelings. Now, uncomfortable feelings are a sign that your skills are lacking in whatever area it is that you're involved in. If you hate facing 3-bets and maybe you never know how to respond, that's a weakness that you've got to be aware of. The second way to find out your weaknesses is by reviewing your stats and win rates. Now, I go through my Poker Tracker 4 database all the time, and I see my own areas in which my play statistics and my win rates could be improved. Negative win rates over large samples, those are sure signs of weakness, and maybe folding or calling too often in certain spots are weaknesses as well. And the last way I know about my weaknesses is because I review all of my tagged hands. Now, as I'm playing, I try to keep in mind to tag important hands with Poker Tracker 4, and I do that so that I can come back later to study those spots that maybe gave me a little bit of trouble. Sometimes when I'm going through my tagged hands, I'm going to spot some kind of a pattern. Like the other day, I tagged 3 hands in one session, and they were all monotone flops. Now, that's a sure sign of weakness around monotone flops. Now, if you don't do any of the 3 things that I just mentioned, I want you to get on it. Knowledge of your weaknesses is the first step to turning them into strengths. Pause the podcast right now and list 4 areas of weakness. I'm sure you don't need to open Poker Tracker 4 or your poker journal for this. Just take out a piece of paper and jot down the first 4 areas that come to mind. You're going to use this list through the rest of this episode and for the next couple of weeks as you are working on turning weaknesses into strengths. So here are my current areas of weakness, and I've put these in order of importance already. Number 1 is I do not ISO raise against the fishiest of fish as often as I'd like to. Number 2, I don't 3-bet re-steal enough from the blinds. Number 3, I want to exploit loose aggressive players better. And number 4, my heads-up sit-and-go skills are lacking. So that's my prioritized list of weaknesses from 1 through 4. But how did I prioritize it this way? Well, you always start with number 1. The key to choosing number 1 comes from answering this question. What's the one poker strength you can build such that by building it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? Now, if you've ever read The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, you've heard a version of this question before. The idea here is that building strengths, it has a cascading effect. You always want to work from big to small because fixing big issues often helps those smaller issues, but sometimes it makes fixing them completely unnecessary. Strengthening your pre-flop game improves your post-flop game. Strengthening your board texture reading, that helps your hand reading and your c-betting skills, and ultimately your profitability as well. Playing more from the cutoff on the button and less from the blinds puts you in some easier post-flop spots because you're going to have position more frequently. So let me explain why my 4 weaknesses are in this order. Number 1 was I do not ISO raise against the fishiest of fish as often as I'd like. This is number 1 because fish are where most profits come from. FISH is an acronym for Fresh Income Source Here. The more profits I'm making, the easier it is for me to experiment with more costly plays like 3-bet bluffs and bluff c-bets and check raises. So the more I put myself into hands against fish, the higher my profit potential. The second weakness on my list was I do not 3-bet re-steal enough from the blinds. This is number 2 because it's a profitable play that can be used against every player type, and it's also a pre-flop skill that will have a direct effect on my post-flop game as well. Number 3 on the list was I want to exploit loose aggressive players better. Now, this is number 3 because lags make up a significant portion of the player pool at America's Card Room. And strengthening my game against loose aggressive players, it's going to make poker easier and more profitable because I spend a lot of time playing there. And lastly, number 4 was my heads-up sit-and-go skills are lacking. This is last on the list because it's not incredibly important. I can just skip these heads-up sit-and-goes and play cash games instead. But I really do like this format, and I know there are plenty of strategies that I can improve upon to win more heads-up sit-and-go matches. Pause the podcast again and prioritize your list of 4 weaknesses. What's the one poker strength you can build such that by building it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? Put that as your number 1, and then out of the remaining 3, ask the question again. That's your number 2, and so on. Now I challenge you to take action. So now that we have a prioritized list of weaknesses to tackle, how do we tackle it? This is what studying poker is all about, turning weaknesses into strengths. Now, I'll give you the simplest way to do this in just 4 easy steps. Step 1 is to do them one at a time. So you're going to tackle the first item on your list, and only that item until you feel you've turned it into a strength. You prioritize your list so you know this new strength will have the biggest impact on your overall game. Do not waste time on other things. Stay focused on this one first. Step 2 is to study something. So just Google or YouTube search the strategy and find something to study. It really doesn't matter if it's a podcast, a video, an article, or a chapter in a book. Simply consume it and learn from it. Step 3 is to take notes. So you always want to take notes in your poker journal as you learn from the item that you chose. When these notes are in your journal, it's super easy to refer back to them during your sessions. Plus, you can use your notes as like a pre-session warm-up to get your mind focused on this new strength that you're building. And step 4 is to take action. So you studied something and you learned something new. Now you must take action with it on the felt because taking action is the best way to learn. Action's the greatest teacher after all. So G.I. Joe had something a little wrong. I learned from G.I. Joe growing up that knowing was half the battle. Well, I think it's just 1/3 of the battle. So knowing your weakness is the first third. Learning good strategies is the second third. And then practicing the strategies, that's the final third. So let's talk about one of the best side effects of turning weaknesses into strengths. Or maybe not side effect, just like an additional benefit of doing so. Let's say your number 1 weakness was calling 3 bets too often. Now, you just spent 2 weeks studying and taking action every single day, and now you've turned this weakness into a strength. You know exactly how to fight back against 3 bets now. You know when to call and when to fold. You've become a master at looking ahead to see whether or not you are likely to face a 3-bet before you open raise. All of this work on your weakness has taught you how others exploited you. You know they 3-bet you larger for value because you couldn't fold. You know they c-bet bluffed you a lot because you were quick to fold on the flop. You know they 3-bet you from position because you kept calling out of position. Awesome! These are all exploits you can now use on other players who call 3-bets too often, just like you used to. So, through all of your work, 2 full weeks of work on improving the weakness of calling 3-bets too often, here are the results. Result number 1 is that you've removed a weakness that was probably costing you lots of money, so your bankroll is going to increase due to this. Result number 2, you've turned facing 3-bets into a strength, and this will lead to increased profits as well because you're doing better 3-bet defense. And number 3, the third result of all this work that you've done, you've learned some great ways to exploit others with your old weakness, so even more profits are coming your way. Challenge! Now it's time for you to turn weaknesses into strengths. I challenge you to follow the 4 steps with your number 1 on the list. Make it a goal of building this into a strength in the next week so you can improve your skill set and your bottom line. Then, of course, move on to number 2.
Oh, that's it now. Get out there and be somebody.